Well, that was a pleasant hour of television right there. Hey guys, this is Justin at the Survivor Review, and today we're talking about episode 9 of season 11 of The X-Files, titled Nothing Lasts Forever. That was some screwed up shit. Yeah. Thing about X-Files being on TV nowadays is that it doesn't have to hold back as much as it used to, and it's pretty obvious with this episode, which is definitely a gross out episode. It's one of the most gross out episodes of the whole show, probably. I enjoyed this episode. I have issues with it. I don't think it's great. I think it's kind of one of the weaker episodes of the second half of the season, which I thought has been really strong so far. This is kind of one of the weaker episodes of that. But there's definitely some enjoyable stuff in here and some really good elements to it. So this episode begins with the scene that almost feels like it's out of a different show. You have these doctors who are basically cutting open this dead body to take out the heart and some of the organs inside, and all of a sudden this girl sneaks in there and ends up killing them, and then she takes the heart and organs and leaves them outside a hospital trying to do a good deed for these people's sins that they committed. That's the opening stinger, and it's kind of just weird. And I just didn't feel like a typical X-Files type of stinger. And you could just tell from the opening few shots of what kind of episode this one was going to be, because when the first few shots is just an extreme close-up of a scalpel hitting the skin and just cutting down and blood coming out, and you're like, okay, I think I know what I'm in for. And so after that you have Mulder and Scully are investigating the crime scene where all the murdered doctors are, and finding out that it's probably connected to the heart and organs that were brought to the hospital, and then finding out that a bunch of heart and organs have gone missing in the city. And then you find out how the girl who killed all the people at the beginning, how she's related to all of this, and basically why she's killing those doctors and giving the hearts to the hospital. It's because her sister has gone missing. She's been gone for some time, and her sister is part of this cult. This cult that's run by this actress who, she was an actress in the 1960s, but if you look at her today, she looks exactly the same way she did in the 60s, because this cult, they blend up the heart and organs and everything and drink it, and that makes them younger. It doesn't make them age. And so when, the hearts and stuff goes missing, that the one that the sister took, then they start freaking out because they're starting to age, they're starting to get old, and they have to deal with this situation. So yeah, this episode is a dark one. It's very morbid, and I don't mind that because I like morbid stuff. I know that sounds weird, a weird thing to say, but I like morbid stuff, and I don't mind that. I like kind of the horror-y, morbid stuff of this episode, where you see them blending up the organs and stuff. It's very screwed up imagery, very out there, but I like that. I don't mind any of that. I like all the stuff with the cult, even though I feel like it wasn't fleshed out as much as it could have been. I like the villain, Barbara. She's not your typical villain, especially for an X-Files episode. She's not your typical kind of villain. When you first see her, you don't even think she's the villain. She's just sitting there on the bed watching the old TV show and reciting every line word for word, and you're like, oh, this is one of the weird characters in this weird cult that's going on. And then as it goes on, you're like, oh, so she's the one behind that? Oh, so she's the bad guy? Okay, when I first time I saw her, I wasn't thinking oh yeah, that's the bad guy, of course. They don't play it the obvious, she's not an evil, scheming kind of person. She's just just a normal person, a seemingly normal person, so you're not expecting her to be the bad guy. And I don't know, I really liked her character. But really, the highlight of this episode, and the best part of it, is the stuff with Mulder and Scully. Because there's other scenes with them outside of the main case that mostly involve Scully at church. And there's a lot of kind of religious kind of themes going on here, and a lot of stuff that just works. There's a lot of great emotional beats with Mulder and Scully, and just a lot of great lines and dialogue between them. That was great. That was easily the best part of the episode. My flaws, though, with the episode, like I said, the cult stuff isn't as fleshed out as it could. And the avenging sister storyline, I felt was actually unnecessary and not really needed. I felt it could have just gotten rid of all of that, and it could have just been Mulder and Scully investigating this weird cult. I don't know, and every time I was focusing on the sister, I was just I wasn't that interested. There's that scene where she's in church talking to the priest. She goes up on something no, they have to be punished, and that is my duty. And I'm just whatever. Like, I don't know, that stuff just didn't. I'm not saying like the actress did a bad job or anything. I thought her acting was fine. I just felt like we didn't need that story element, and I felt we could just gotten rid of that and fleshed out some more stuff like the cult and everything, and it would have been a much more solid episode and wouldn't have felt like it was trying to do too much. Plot-wise, it doesn't feel like a whole lot happens in this episode. Like, when you're following the cult and everything, it's just them hanging out in their apartment, really. And then when it comes to Mulder and Scully and the actual case, it doesn't seem like a whole lot went on case-wise. Like, it wasn't really a complicated case at all. So, plot-wise, I didn't feel like it was the best. Like, story-wise, I don't think it was the best. This one is mostly made up of, like, really interesting moments and really cool ideas, really, like, weird, freaky, screwed-up shit that happens. And that's kind of what makes it really good, and the character moments. But I like that stuff with the cults. I love the scene when the barber starts singing that song while that one dude is sacrificing himself and just cutting himself open. Like, that was some screwed up stuff. Like, I like that scene. It was, like, both screwed up but also comical at the same time. It was really weird. It was kind of conflicting emotions going on there. I was like, oh, this is kind of funny and weird, but that dude's cutting himself open. That's not funny. But, I don't know, I like that whole scene. I thought that was probably one of the best scenes in the entire episode. I love the dialogue back and forth between Mulder and Scully. There's so much great Mulder and Scully dialogue in this episode. From Mulder starting to wear glasses because he can't read his phone. And when he puts on the glasses and looks at Scully, he goes, "Did you get your hair cut?" Like, that was a great line. I love Mulder commenting on the crime scene in the opening of the episode.
This victim was murdered by these two, who in turn were murdered by someone else in a style familiar to fans of Hammer horror films, of which I am one.
And I love him saying that. I just love Mulder saying he's a fan of Hammer horror movies. That makes me happy. I like that moment. Or like the scene where he goes to talk to Scully in church and he walks in and goes, "Oh, I didn't burst into flames when I walked in the doorway." And that kind of stuff. And then you get to the final scene, which is a great final scene if this was confirmed to be the final season of the show, which it probably is. But, you know, that hasn't been confirmed yet. And the final scene of this episode plays out perfectly like an epilogue to the show in a way. It's just this great conversation between Mulder and Scully. And a great emotional moment where Mulder talks about how he always thinks about how if Scully had just left the room in the first episode of The X-Files, how different her life would have been. Like, all the heartbreak she wouldn't have had to endure, and she would have, you know, had a happy life with a husband and kids where she wouldn't have had to, like, hide and try to protect. And that moment, like, really got to me. Like, it shows how much, like, Mulder cares. And the fact that, like, Scully basically is like, you know, I don't regret any of this. I don't regret, you know, walking through that door. I'm like, oh, that was a great moment. And, you know, at the end, like, where she whispers that thing into her ear, and she goes, you know, "That's my leap of faith." And I'm like, ooh, what is that? Like, I'm really intrigued. I wonder if that's going to have something that's going to, like, pay off in the next episode or not. Like, I don't know. But I love that entire, like, last scene. I thought that scene was great. And it's just a really great testament to the chemistry that David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson have, where they just go together so perfectly that if they do end up doing a season 12 without Scully, it won't be the same, man. And that final scene shows you how much it wouldn't be right. And I love that last scene, especially with Mulder saying, like, "I've always wondered how this is going to end." Like, it's really interesting the way that scene was done. I liked it a lot. I loved all that stuff. Overall, though, I just really enjoyed this episode. Like I said, it's not perfect, it's not great. Like I said, some stuff could have been trimmed and could have been expanded upon, but I was really enjoying it with just a crazy cult plot line. I thought that was really entertaining, really dark and out there. Like, I can see some people not liking this episode because of, like, how graphic it gets at times. This episode can be pretty graphic. Like, oh, that crazy thing, like the doctor that Barbara, like, works with and, like, lives with, and how he's always, like, surgically, like, tying himself together with other people and just draining their blood. Like, that was some, like, crazy stuff. Like, that was really interesting. That was nuts. I liked all of that stuff. Like, interesting plotline. I thought it was very fun, really different, and I liked it. It was kind of like a different take on the cult aspects that you normally, like, see in X-Files episodes, because it was a really strange premise of this, like, actress who, you know, thinks she's a lot more famous back then than she really was. Like that scene where she's talking with Mulder and Scully where they first, like, when they confront each other, basically, and she's just like, you don't see, you can't tell who I am by looking at me, and there's like, who are you? Like, it's a lady who clearly thinks she's more important than she really is. It was just a very unique villain. Like, I really liked the villain in this episode. It was very different than what you'd expect. And like I said, really screwed up stuff with them, making smoothies basically out of human organs and stuff and drinking it, which is, that's some nasty stuff. Like I said, I think it's the weakest of the later half of the season so far, because I think like the later season at least has been hitting like a pretty high streak and been doing really good so far. I think this is kind of like the weakest of that. Probably better than the Skinner episode, but like not as good as like the one with the technology and then Familiar. Not as good as those two for sure, but definitely an interesting one. Like, I spent a lot of time watching that episode being like, what the fuck? Like, this is just nuts. So that's interesting, and the Mulder and Scully stuff was great. Like, that was definitely the highlights of the episode. They were the best part. All that stuff was so well handled. And yeah, it just made for a really entertaining episode that I really enjoyed. So yeah, that's episode 9 of season 11. One more to go. Next week is the season finale. That's what they're calling it. They're not calling it series finale, which is interesting. So I guess they don't know for sure if they're ending it or if they're bringing it back. We'll have to see. Although, sad part is I'm not getting my hopes up for it because it's another heavy mythology episode written and directed by Chris Carter, and we know how those turn out. You know what? We'll see what happens. So yeah, that's about it for now. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.